All right.
I'm Emily Martin, and I'm doing my presentation on Immanuel Kant. He was born in a university town in East Prussia, which is present-day Russia. As a child, he attended a pietist school, which is an evangelical Lutheran movement. It emphasizes reliance on divine grace and the experience of religious emotions. His youthful reaction against pietism is reflected in his work later because he had an emphasis on reason and autonomy. Kant also went to university there in his town and was later appointed to the university's faculty. He spent the rest of his life and his career there. It's said that Kant probably never traveled more than 40 miles away from his birthplace. He led a life of rigid self-control and duty. For example, he never married. He woke up at the same time every day, took his lunch at exactly 1 o'clock, and then took the same walk around the university. A few of his beliefs. He agreed with the empirical belief that knowledge comes from experience, but he believed that the empiricists failed to ask the fundamental question, how is experience itself possible? According to Kant, true sciences must begin with concepts established on the basis of reason alone and need to be able to establish lawful relationships that can be described through mathematical formulas. Along with this belief, because psychology lacked rational conceptual basis, it failed to be a true science. He said that psychological experiments were impossible because observing a mental state will change the mental state that's being observed. He said that the only legitimate method for psychology was through anthropological observation. These views were a force that the first generation of German psychologists had to strive against in establishing their science. He had 2 major works in his life, the Critique of Pure Reason and the Critique of Practical Reason. Both these works established him as the leading German epistemologist and formed a philosophical counterweight to the British empiricists. In his Critique of Pure Reason, he explained institutions or categories of learning and how they interact with each other. The first one was priori, which is knowledge known beforehand or knowledge that's inborn and doesn't depend on experience. The second was posteriori, which is knowledge that's known afterward or derived from experience. He also talks about cause and effect, reciprocity, reality, existence, necessity, understanding, judgment, and reason. His critique of practical reason was an examination of public affairs and the creation of a code of conduct. He said that duty is sublime, mighty, and fundamental. It was called the categorical imperative, which was to be obeyed and followed without question. His critique taught that in public affairs we must not merely behave to bring the greatest pleasure to ourselves and others, but we must follow the higher obligation of duty as well. This concept was an important influence on political and social behavior in Germany and England. For example, a common prayer in England around the time was, "We thank thee, God, for this food. We thank thee, God, for this prayer, and we thank thee, God, above all, for the categorical imperative." His dedication to duty was exemplified in the way he lived his life every day. Immanuel Kant was known as a subjectivist, a nativist, a rationalist, and the empiricist nemesis. Kant was a major figure in German philosophy and an important influence on the first generation of German psychology.